All right. Good morning, folks. Welcome. Thank you all so much for coming to our virtual community briefing for the 26-27 New York State AAPI Community Development Fund. My name is Francis, he, him pronouns, and I'm the grants coordinator at CACF. And happy and grateful uh, with myself and the rest of our grants and contracts team. Just happy and grateful to welcome you all here to today's briefing. Before we start today's briefing, we just want to share some important housekeeping rules. So first and foremost, if you haven't done so, please introduce yourselves in the Zoom chat box with your name, your org name, and where in New York you're based. Now, throughout this briefing, you can also drop questions in the Zoom chat box. We will answer your questions once we get to the Q&A portion of our briefing. And then lastly, a copy of both the slide deck presentation and the recording will be shared after this briefing. So with that being said, we will get started.
Welcome, everyone. I'm just going to go over today's agenda. So the grants and contracts team will be introducing ourselves, and we'll be speaking a little bit about what CACF does. Next, we'll be doing an overview of 2026 to 2027 AAPI CDF, then organizational eligibility, vetting, project areas, and budget. Next will be application and evaluation, then contact information from our team, and lastly, Q&A. So we can go to the next slide. So I will go ahead and introduce myself first. My name is Adeline DeDivas. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a Grants and Contracts Associate. I'll pass it off to Francis.
Thank you so much, Adeline, and good morning again, folks. My name is Francis Asperk, he, him pronouns, and I'm the grants coordinator at CACF. And I'll pass it to my colleague, Kit.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. My name is Kit Lau, pronouns she, her. I am the Senior Contracts Coordinator, and I'll pass it to Ambrosia.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is Ambrosia Cowie. I go by she, they pronouns, and I am the Director of Grants and Contracts here at CACF. And before we really jumped into the presentation, we did want to introduce folks to sort of the rest of the Grants and Contracts team and give everybody just an overview about CACF, the Coalition for Asian American Children and Families. I know I see a lot of familiar names in the chat and our participant list, but I also see a lot of folks who are new. So we just want to make sure that we're introducing ourselves and sort of giving you the lay of who you may be working with as part of the grants and contracts team. Next slide, please. So in addition to the folks on the call, the rest of our team are composed of Fiona, who's another grants coordinator, a similar position to Francis, Stephen, who's a senior contracts coordinator, a similar position to Kit, and Camilla, who is our contracts and invoicing coordinator. They typically work with our AAPI equity portfolio. I think I saw some of you who may be familiar with them and have worked with them before. And we also have Juan, who's another contracts and invoicing coordinator and supports the rest of the grants and contracts team. So just wanted to give you an overview of some of the folks who will be around and supporting the work of AAPI CDF and general subcontracting at CACF. Next slide, please. And again, before we move forward, we did want to just introduce the organization a little bit. So CACF, the Coalition for Asian American Children and Families, is the nation's only Pan-Asian children and families organization, bringing together community-based organizations as well as youth and community members to fight for equity for the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Our mission is to advocate for equity and opportunity for marginalized AAPI children and families across the state of New York. And our vision is for all children and families, including those who are from the AAPI community in New York, to be safe, healthy, and able to reach their full potential in life. And the way that we do that, next slide, please, is by focusing on three main pillars. So our first pillar is leadership development, which is where we do a lot of the work, the direct work with community. We have several programs that focus on youth and developing youth leaders through ASAP, ICANN, and AAPI Lead. We also work with parents and caregivers and community-based organizations to help develop leadership mindsets, to bring folks better awareness of their identities, their role in society, and help folks build the skills to uplift all ships, and engage in cross-collaborative advocacy. The next thing we also focus on is membership and coalition building. So CACF has a paid membership structure, but within this specific pillar, we also really focus on building up the capacity of communities, organizations, and individuals. So the way we do that is through our grants and subcontract program, one of which AAPI Community Development Fund is a part of. We also run the New York State Equity Budget, the CCNSF Nonprofit Stabilization Fund, our Patient Navigator Program, and our Asian American Crisis Relief Fund. So again, a lot of you I know are sort of familiar with CACF, so you may be part of some or even all of these programs. We also work on membership and coalition building through convening power. So we lead a number of campaign steering committees, and we focus on intergenerational learning across the community. And finally, CACF engages in policy and advocacy work. So these are a list at the far right of all of our campaigns we're currently engaged in. We do budget equity on the city and state level. 18% and growing is the name of our campaign on the city level. And the Equity Budget Coalition is the name of our coalition on the state level. We're actually really involved. We're just starting to get into advocacy season for the Equity Budget Coalition. So we have an advocacy day coming up on February 10th, and we encourage all of you to join that and join us up in Albany. If you have any questions about that, you can reach out to us, and we'll connect you to the EBC team to make sure that you're supported in engaging with advocacy with us. The AAPI Community Development Fund actually comes from directly from these advocacy actions. So we encourage you to be involved with us and help us to push for additional funding for our AAPI communities. We also engage in language access, data disaggregation, education equity, health equity, and child welfare. So again, if you're interested in just coming to CACF, or you're new to us and what we do, if any of these seem really interesting to you, please make sure you're connect with us, and we're happy to send all of the information and connect you with the correct people at our organization. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much, Ambrosia. And as you're reviewing and navigating and understanding our latest RFA for AAPI CDF, we're just happy and grateful to offer this opportunity for a fifth consecutive cycle. And we know how critical and important it is to all our communities throughout New York. So as we have a mix of folks who are familiar with AAPI CDF and also some newer folks who are just learning about it, we would like to just share and clarify just a little bit more of what you're reviewing in the RFA. So the 2026-2027 AAPI CDF, it holistically supports approaches to address hate, bias, and racism, also addressing mental health needs and increasing the safety and the well-being of our AAPI New Yorkers, and also providing critical social and health programs and services that, again, continue to promote the safety and overall well-being of our AAPI communities all throughout New York. And throughout this briefing, you'll hear and understand more clarifications as you're continuing to navigate and learn more about this fund, again, through our RFA and through our application process.
To be able to be eligible to apply for this grant, your organization must have 501(c)(3) status for at least 2 years. as well as be currently registered with the Charities Bureau of the New York State Office of the Attorney General. Your organization must be New York based and serve primarily New York State residents, and also have experience serving the AAPI populations and communities. We will also check if you have a demonstrated commitment to equal employment opportunities, and also if you have good capacity to deliver culturally competent services. If you're an religious organization or entity, your services must be open to all communities. And please also keep in mind that any organizations that have an operating budget of more than 5 million will not be eligible to apply for this grant. If you are receiving a direct allocation through the 25-26 equity budget, you will not be eligible to apply for this grant. And if you're not sure about this item, let us know. We can find out whether you are eligible and whether you are receiving the 25-26 direct allocation for equity budget. Next slide, please. The vetting process, our team conducts internal vetting on all submitted applications. We will check these lists of databases and agencies for the vetting process. The EIN number that you give us, we look that up on the IRS database to make sure your organization is 501c3 status as well as have tax exempt status. We'll also check the New York State Department of State Corporations database, as well as check if you are currently registered with the New York State Charities Bureau. Also, we will look into the New York State Department of Labor and verify if any organizations appear on the debarment list. And the debarment list is not a list that any organizations will want to be flagged on. But if you do come up on this list, we'll have a conversation with you about your situation and see if you're still eligible to apply for the grant. There are links that's hyperlinked on here, and Adeline is also sending out the links in the chat box. And feel free to go into these databases and look up your organization. You can look up your organization status and if you also appear on any debarment lists. Please also know that this applies to fiscal sponsor organizations too. So if you are planning to use fiscal sponsorship to apply for this grant, your fiscal sponsor will also be vetted by us. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, for the eligibility requirements, your fiscal sponsor must also meet all the criteria for those eligibility requirements. Last but not least, we will also look at your budgets that you are going to submit with your application. We're checking if your budget costs align with your proposed project to make sure everything does make sense in terms of your spending to support your proposed projects, and to make sure your costs are compliant with the grant requirements and that it will be allowable. So when you're crafting your budgets, just make sure that it does align with your project proposal. Next slide, please. On your application, you are asked to submit a budget, and CACF provides the Excel template for the budget sheet. There are two rules when thinking about your requested funding amount, which is also the ask. And the first one is that your requested ask cannot exceed $30,000. And the second rule is that the ask cannot exceed 35% of your annual operating budget. So please look at your annual operating budget total and make sure that the ask that you will enter in the application is no more than 35% of your organizational budget. And this is also something that's part of our vetting process and that we check very closely. Now, if your organization doesn't have an operating budget, you may request up to $5,000 for this grant. The AAPI Community Development Fund, or we also call it AAPI CDF, it's interchangeable. So the CDF is a reimbursement-based award. So what this means is that organizations are expected to pay for project costs upfront first, and then you can request reimbursement through reporting processes that we will explain more if you are awarded. And please know that if you are awarded, you must spend down your full award amount. And it's very important to spend down your full award amount to show that the funding was critical and there was a need for it. So with in thinking about your budget, please keep in mind your organizational operating budget in relation to your ask for your funding amount request. And also make sure that you download the budget sheet that's on the application that we provide. Next slide, please. The application has two sections. The first section will ask for your organizational background and info, and the second section will ask about your project proposal and your budget. So as I mentioned, there is a budget sheet that CACF provides for you to download that you'll find on the application. And there are two documents that you will need to upload. Right, number one is the budget sheet that I've mentioned. And the second document that you'll need to upload is your organizational budget. We do not provide any template for that. You can submit your organizational budget like in PDF format, Excel format, or Word doc. And here is also the link to the CDF online application if you haven't gotten hold of the link yet. And we will send you a copy of the slide deck and you can access the links straight from the slide deck, as well as the links from the vetting agencies and databases that we talked about earlier. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much, Kit. So as you're, again, continuing to navigate through our latest RFA, along with the online application, so we just want to bring to your attention for our project funding areas. So we've updated one of our work scope areas, which is boldened here, called the community-centered programming. Now, if folks who applied for last year's AAPI CDF, you may have seen a different name, which was known as the Healing Focused and Community Empowerment Programs. So we decided to change the name because there was a lot of overlap between the healing focused and community empowerment programs, between that and the cultural and arts programming. So we wanted to lessen that confusion. And with the community-centered programming, as you're reading the description and definition in the RFA, so with the community-centered programming, it continues to center and focus around relationship building, community healing, and cultural preservation. So we wanted to just bring that to your attention. Another update you may have noticed in this latest RFA is that under the life affirming multi-social services, we added an additional program, the civic engagement programs. We included that, especially if folks want to do a project around civic education workshops, community outreach, and voter registration. So if folks are interested in doing a project relating to civic engagement programs, uh, at least it uh, at least it aligns with life-affirming multi-social services. So again, something in addition that you may have not seen in last year's RFA that now you're seeing in this RFA. In terms of the project evaluation criteria, and we know that the narrative portion of your application as you're thinking about and drafting your thoughts on what you'd like to propose for your project proposal for AAPI CDF. So it's important to make sure first and foremost that your proposal, that it's focused, that the project is well defined, that it clearly aligns with at least one of the project areas that you want to select. As mentioned before, in terms of the purpose of the AAPI CDF award, that these are projects that holistically address hate and bias. It's also important to make sure that you have a clear description and understanding of the community need and the project's potential impact to the AAPI community. Also important to keep in mind too, that your project proposal, that it's demonstrating the linguistic and cultural capacity as an organization, along with an understanding of the cultural and linguistic needs that you're continuing to serve to your population. So also, please keep in mind too that for the 26-27 AAPI CDF, that the timeline is 11 months, and we'll explain that in another slide. But as you're thinking about your project proposal and thinking about, again, the timeline for this specific award. So again, it's 11 months, and just making sure you're keeping that timeline intact, and also making sure during that 11-month timeline period that your project has a clear proposed impact. As Kit mentioned before on the slide about the project budget, it's also important to, as you're drafting and thinking about the narrative portion of your project proposal, making sure that component aligns with the project budget that you want to submit, making sure there is a clear and direct relationality between the project budget summary and the proposed project proposal. And lastly, as Kit was mentioning too, and especially because this is an 11-month grant period, it's important to keep in mind as you're thinking about your project budget, making sure that in your project budget that there's reasonable project costs that reflect, again, on the proposed project and how you envision, if awarded, how you envision allocating your using your allocated funds during that 11-month period, and making sure those goals and intentions for your proposed project that they can be accomplished within that time period. So yes, as mentioned before, this is an 11-month grant period, and you may have already been well aware that we've already released the RFA since mid-December of 2025. And just giving folks a sense of where we stand after today's briefing, we will offer another briefing on February 19th at 2 p.m. You are more than welcome to sign up. We will still cover the same parameters as you are hearing in today's briefing. In addition, we will have virtual office hours. So both myself and Kit, we will take appointment requests. And this would be the week before the application is due. But also, if you want to reach out to us before that week, you are more than welcome to. We are happy to speak with you, happy to answer any questions or clarifications that we can be able to troubleshoot and support with. The most important date we definitely want folks to keep in mind is March 9th, which is when the application deadline is due. anything after the application deadline will not be considered. So what happens from there after you submit your application? The allocation, excuse me, your your applications will be reviewed by our allocation panelists, who are volunteered professionals within the nonprofit and philanthropic sectors. So they will review and evaluate your applications, and they will give us the decisions of who to award. So in terms of like when exactly you'll be hearing from us, it will be at the latest April 24th. But again, please continue to reach out to us if you have any questions as you're still while you're still awaiting for your status. And as mentioned before, this is an 11-month grant period. So if awarded AAPI CDF, the start date will be May 1st, 2026, and the completion date will be March 31st, 2027.
Here are some common questions that we wanted to address first. And these are the questions that we get a lot from our applicants for this grant. The first question is, if my organization does receive funding from the 25-26 New York State DOS Equity, Department of State Equity, either through CACF or AAF, which is Asian American Federation, are you still eligible to apply for this 26-27 AAPI CDF grant? And the answer is no. If you are receiving a direct allocation for the equity funding from either AAF or us, you won't be eligible to apply. Because the reason being is because AAPI CDF and the equity funding, it comes from the same state contract. So an organization can only receive one or the other, only one or the other funding. Second question is, did the application change from last year? And no, the application questions and format are the same from last year, so there's no changes on the questions. Is any of this funding from federal government? So thus far, the API CDF comes from state contract, and it is not from the federal government and is 100% state funded. Do we receive funds at midpoint of the project timeline? Yes, you will receive an advance, which is 25% of your award once your subcontract agreement is executed with us. And if you are awarded, we will also let you know how you can request reimbursement for the rest of the funding for your award. And the reimbursement process happens at least 2 times throughout the grant reporting process. And the last question is there an opportunity for us to give you feedback on your submitted application, even if you submitted your application earlier than March 9th? So unfortunately, we at CACF will not be able to give you feedback on your application. Once your application is submitted, that is your application. There won't be any room for changes, and your application does go directly to the allocation panel for review. Next slide, please. Here is how you can contact our team. Here's the contact info for Ambrosia, Adeline, Francis, and myself. And reach out to us if you have any questions, any concerns concerning your application. We can support with technical questions about the application. Next slide, please.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Kit. And yeah, now we will go to our Q&A portion. So I'm going to stop sharing our slide deck just so that we can see what questions have popped in. So just to give folks a quick update of the format for our Q&A. First, we will go over the questions that were asked from our Zoom registration, along with what folks dropped in the Zoom chat box. And then from there, we will open it up to all of you. We would strongly recommend please using the raise hand emoji just so that we can ensure that our Q&A session goes smoothly. So we will start first with the questions that folks gave us in advance.
I'm looking in the chat box. So I think the first question I see is, please, can you share the location and more information about the Advocacy Day? So we can reach out to our policy team and give you more information through email. So can you shoot us an email, Nada? And we will gladly give you information on how you can support our Advocacy Day with CACF.
Yes, I will be happy to shoot an email. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next question is from AAPI for Change. I know some reimbursement grants offer connected loan programs. Would that be an option here? The AAPI CDF grant is a reimbursement-based award, so I don't think the loan programs can be a part of that. Is this about relating to paying project costs up front first? You can come off mute
I can
and
actually
for
jump in and
clarification.
answer that question.
Sure.
So we do not have a connected loan program for AAPI CDF. So it is a purely reimbursement-based grant. We do understand that, especially for smaller organizations who have less cash flow, that can be a challenge. So if you are awarded a grant, we can work with you around what might be a better option. But currently, we do not have a connected loan program, and the payment you would get is a 25% advance at subcontract execution. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambrosia. I see another question from Pauline. Can you provide the application questions in a separate document? Of course. So Pauline, shoot us an email, and also anyone else that would like a separate document from the application for a list of the questions that are on the application for you to reference. And we can provide that. A question from Grace. Could you please share the PDF files of today's presentation? Yes, we will share the slide deck with everyone. I see another question from Nada. If my fiscal sponsor organization has a large budget, can I apply through them for $30,000? So if you are planning to use fiscal sponsorship, we will first make sure that your fiscal sponsor does meet all the eligibility requirements and also the vetting as well. The organizational budget will be based on your organization and not your fiscal sponsor. So in this case, for fiscal sponsorship, we don't determine your funding ask through your fiscal sponsorships organizational budget. We determine your funding ask based on your organization's organizational budget.
Hey, Kit. There's a question from Julia Kostner. Are organizations eligible to apply if they are not AAPI led, but they serve refugees from Eastern Asia? Yes, Julia, you can still apply. And then Rena asks, do you have any suggestions for orgs who have received the grant previously? For example, likelihood of receiving the grant again, or whether we can apply for continuity of programming versus new initiatives. So, and I believe, Rena, you also sent this similar question in our Zoom registration. So yeah, thank you for asking that question again. So folks who, for returning grantees of CDF, you have the flexibility and option in terms of how you envision your project proposal. You have the flexibility and option of deciding whether for this application cycle, if you want to continue on the same project that you did in the prior cycle, but with you can with changes or modifications if you foresee that. You can do an expanded version of what your project was, or it can be entirely new. So you do have that option of how you envision your project proposal for this application cycle. So again, this is specifically for the returning awardees who are thinking about and envisioning what their project proposal may be.
Yeah, and what's most important, Rena, is that whether it's a new initiative or continuing an ongoing program, it's most important to address what is the need of your community. If it is an ongoing program, why is this need still ongoing? So, and if it's a new initiative, what what are the needs of the community and how this grant will help address that need. So we don't take points off if you are continuing an existing program. It's more about how you are communicating on the application on why you are proposing that certain project or program. See a question from Zach. If we are an organization that is incorporated as a 501(c)(3) but registered with the New York Attorney General's office, do we qualify to apply? Yes. If you are 501(c)(3) for at least 2 years and you have current registration with the Charities Bureau, New York State of Attorney General's office, you do meet that eligibility requirement, but you also have to meet the rest of the eligibility requirements that was on the slide that we shared. If we missed any questions in the chat box, or if you have any questions on your mind now, you can come off mute or write it in the chat box. So another one came in from Julia. Can a project proposal include servicing non-AAPI populations if it also services AAPI population? Francis, can you take this one?
Yeah, thank you, Julia, for asking this question. So yes, this can also include the non-AAPI populations, but again, because this is the AAPI Community Development Fund, just make sure in your project proposal that it's clearly speaking directly about how your project proposal is servicing the AAPI population. And in the previous question you asked before, how is your project proposal servicing and helping and impacting the refugees from Eastern Asia? Also, just want to uplift one more question that was received in our Zoom registration. So someone asked us, hi, we are considering helping some small organizations to apply for the CDF with our fiscal sponsorship. Does that mean we may lose the eligibility to apply for our own project? Thank you.
That's a very good question. And the answer is if you're an organization that is interested in applying for this grant, but you also want to support another organization that wants to apply through you as a fiscal sponsor, that is allowable. But please know that if you are an organization that is applying and that you are also supporting another organization as a fiscal sponsor, um, you will be subcontracted with CACF. Um, all fiscal sponsors will be subcontracted with CACF and not the sponsored organization if awarded. Question from Zach. Can you share the total amount that's being awarded through this year's grant, or how many organizations will be awarded? We do not know the total pot for this year's grant.
Oh, I'm going to jump in. Yes, we can share the total amount. Um, According to our EBC funding agreement, the total amount for CDF is 557,683. So that was the allocation for the Community Development Fund through the Equity Budget Coalition, which is how this initiative is funded. We do not know how many organizations will be awarded, just because we don't know how many people are applying, what the application amounts will be for this year.
If you have any questions, please continue to drop it into the chat box, or you can come off mute and ask us directly. Question from Kelly. If the project is direct service, such as community-based workshops, is there a target number of how many people should be direct participants? The answer is there is no rule or requirement on how many participants you must have for any of your direct services programs or workshops.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Arush's question is, any suggestion for new starting organization in middle of applying for state registration after being tax exempt? Okay, so so it sounds like you have tax exempt status as a 501c3. You have to be eligible, you do have to have 501c3 status for at least 2 years. And I think you're saying that you're applying for state registration with Charities Bureau. Yes. If you're in the middle of applying for state registration, as long as you apply May, by May, then you do meet the eligibility requirement for the Charities Bureau registration. We would ask for confirmation from you. Like it could be an email or a letter from the New York State Attorney General that you have put in your request to apply to register, and that you can provide that for us. Question from Julia. Are all 501c3 orgs registered with New York State Charities Bureau, or is this something separate? That's a good question. Like, I cannot answer if all 501c3 orgs are registered with New York State Charities Bureau. I know that for some 501c3 orgs, they might not have current registration. They might be registered sometimes when we check, they might be registered like 5 years ago, 7 years ago, and that will not meet the eligibility requirements. You need to be recently and have current registration with this agency. But Julia, if you have more questions, reach out to us and we can answer more specifically for your situation. Arush asks, do you have fiscal sponsored list for new orgs? The answer to that is we don't have a list of fiscal sponsors. We might be able to provide some resources please reach out to us and we could help you out for your specific situation. Kelly asks, is it possible to get examples of what is considered community impact for arts and cultural projects? Oh, I'll pass it to Francis.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kit. And no, thank you, Kelly. So is it possible to get examples of what are considered arts and, excuse me, what projects would align with arts and cultural programming? And there's, sorry, I'm just, sorry, I was having a little tech issue on my end. Um, but in terms of arts and cultural programming, like in terms of, so it looks like you were asking um, about what would be considered community impact for arts and cultural programming. And uh, there are options on how you can approach the arts and cultural programming. It could be relating to cultural events or cultural celebrations or festivals that showcase the culture and diversity of the AAPI communities throughout New York. It could be something relating to in terms of arts. It could be something relating to like murals or art making projects. It can be even performing arts with like theater projects or artistic programs that can build spaces of solidarity and connectivity between our AAPI and communities of color. These are just some examples that can reflect community impact within this specific project area. And Kelly, if you have more questions in regards to that, if you want to go a little bit deeper, please reach out to us and we can schedule a time so that we can listen more on what you may be thinking about for this work scope area.
Great.
Also, to build off of Francis's sort of answer, one of the things that CACF does in terms of this and all of our subcontracting programs is that we don't want to be prescriptive about impact. We're really interested. You folks know your communities best. You folks know the needs and things that are happening within your community best. So, in terms of community impact, our definition for that is broad, and we really encourage you folks to sort of define the impact that you want to see and share with us. So it can look it can and does look very, very different from all of our different folks just because communities are so vast and diverse. So in terms of community impact, we're just really looking for that understanding of your community and how your project relates to the need that you're filling, if that's also helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Kelly, for your question. And thank you, Ambrosia, for the additional clarification. So Saiful asks, can women organization from Bangladesh refugee camp apply for the grant, but they don't have legal authorization permit?
So I think we're not quite sure what legal authorization permit means or what that entails. But going back to our eligibility requirements slide that we went over, an organization must meet those eligibility requirements, right? Including being 501(c)(3) for 2 years and registered with Charities Bureau and all the rest of their eligibility requirements listed. If you do not meet those requirements of 501(c)(3) status, uh, maybe there could be an option of using fiscal sponsorship, but we need to learn more about your organization and your background. So reach out to us. so we can talk further. We're thinking about the budget expenses for your proposed project that you're going to provide to us within the application. You should think about how your costs are supporting your proposed project, whether it's through salaries, supplies, equipment, and so on. Where there is no rule that we have that a certain percentage needs to go, a certain percentage needs to go towards different categories. And there's also no cap requirements for the category. But having said that, we do need to make sure that the expenses that you provide on your budget for us to review, that it does make sense. Like, why is it going towards salaries? Who's on your who's who's on your staff that will be supporting your project? Um, what supplies, equipment, uh, you will be planning to purchase for your proposed project, and how will it support your project? And every case is different, right? Like every project is different. So the needs on what you need to spend for your project is just different for every organization. So to answer your question, high level, there is no rule or requirement for the allocation for the categories, but we're looking to see if the costs you're proposing is compliant, will be allowable under the grant requirements, and that it does support your project well. Are there any other questions? You can continue to drop in the chat box or come off mute.
Yeah, thank you, Kit. Just again, being mindful of time, it's about 11:58, so I know we are going to be wrapping up shortly. So if there aren't any other questions, as Kit mentioned, folks can email us with questions. Happy to schedule one-on-one appointment office hours, just to answer any questions further that we weren't able to answer at this time. But again, we just want to thank you all for coming to our community briefing for the 26-27 AAPI Community Development Fund. Again, as mentioned at the start of our briefing, we will send a copy of the slide deck presentation along with recording. We will send that after today's briefing. But again, please stay in touch with us if you have more questions. We appreciate your patience. We appreciate your participation and all your questions. And we look forward to seeing you again. We will again have this briefing on Thursday, February 19th at 2 p.m. So you'll definitely continue to be hearing from us in terms of upcoming announcements, just so that you're staying on track. But yeah, thank you all so much. We appreciate you being here. Thank you again, and stay warm.